The battle was fierce, a chaotic roar of lasers and explosions filling the vastness of space. Human ships, equipped with the latest eye-driven technology, fought side by side with their robotic allies, cutting through the enemy lines with precision. Yet, amidst this chaos, something felt off. A strange silence hung in the air, broken only by the occasional hum of cloaking devices powering up. Captain Marcus surveyed the scene from his command deck, his eyes narrowing as his soldiers moved in perfect sync. "Something's wrong," Marcus muttered to himself. "It's too quiet." His instincts were right. As the human forces pushed forward, ready to deliver the final blow to the alien fleet, a sudden ripple in the fabric of space shattered the calm. Without warning, multiple alien ships appeared out of nowhere, sleek, almost invisible, their cloaking technology so advanced that they seemed like shadows in the dark. They struck with deadly precision, their energy weapons cutting through human ships like butter. "Captain, we're being flanked," shouted Lieutenant Bonner, his voice crackling over the comms. Marcus didn't need any more confirmation. He could see the sudden shift in the battle, the unexpected wave of enemy ships wreaking havoc on his fleet. But there was something even more disturbing than the attack itself. It was how they had appeared. No warning, no detection. These ships were invisible, blending seamlessly into the background of space until the moment they attacked. "Activate cloaking," Marcus ordered, his voice calm but firm. "Prepare to counterattack." His crew scrambled to engage their own cloaking devices, but it was too late. The enemy was everywhere. These aliens weren't just using cloaking, they had perfected it. And they weren't just hiding from sight. They were bending the very space around them, making them undetectable even by the most advanced sensors. "Captain, we're losing ships." Bonner's voice echoed through the comms again. Marcus could hear the desperation in his voice. The battle was spiraling out of control, and there was no way to predict where the next attack would come from. "We can't fight what we can't see," Marcus said, his mind racing. He was a soldier, a tactician, and a leader, but nothing had prepared him for this. The aliens had found a way to use space itself as a weapon, warping the fabric of reality and turning the battlefield into a living nightmare. The fleet was in disarray, struggling to keep up with the attacks. Marcus's mind was running 1,000 miles an hour, trying to piece together the puzzle. Who were these aliens? Where did they come from? And how could they have such technology, something that outclassed even humanity's greatest achievements? A sudden blast jolted the ship, knocking Marcus to the floor. Alarms blared, and the lights flickered. His vision swam for a moment, but he quickly regained his bearings. As he pulled himself up, his gaze shifted to the starboard window. His heart sank. The enemy ships weren't just attacking. They were disappearing, vanishing into thin air, slipping through the very fabric of space like they had never been there at all. The eerie silence returned, only broken by the sounds of the human fleet scrambling to stay intact. Marcus's mind raced as he fought to maintain control. His crew was composed, but he could see the fear in their eyes. They were all thinking the same thing. This wasn't just another battle. Something much worse was happening here. As the ship shook again, Marcus made a decision. He had to know what was happening. If they didn't figure out how to stop these invisible enemies, humanity was doomed. His team's only chance was to gather intel. They needed to learn how the aliens were using this advanced technology and find a way to fight back. "Lieutenant Bonner," Marcus said, his voice calm but carrying the weight of authority, "I need a team ready for a recon mission. We're going in to gather intel on those ships. Find out how they're disappearing." Bonner's face appeared on the holographic screen. "Sir, are you sure? It's suicide to send a team out there with all the ships vanishing and reappearing." "I'm aware of the risks, Lieutenant," Marcus replied, his gaze hardening. "But we don't have a choice. We need to know how they're doing this, or we'll never win this war." Bonner hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Understood, Captain. I'll assemble the team." As Marcus prepared for the mission, The reality of the situation began to sink in. The enemy wasn't just stronger, they were invisible. For the first time in his career, Marcus felt the true weight of the human fleet's vulnerability. His crew was brave, but they were facing an enemy who could strike without warning, who could be everywhere and nowhere at once. The rules of war had just changed, and humanity was struggling to keep up. The countdown to their recon mission began, and Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. A trap set by an enemy who was always one step ahead, an enemy who knew how to manipulate the very space around them. As the mission team prepared to board their shuttle, Marcus stared out the window, the distant stars now seeming colder, farther away. Whatever these aliens were, whatever they had planned, Marcus knew one thing for certain. Humanity had to find a way to fight back, or this battle would be their last. The mission was set in motion. Captain Marcus stood before his team, the weight of responsibility pressing down on his shoulders. This wasn't just another reconnaissance mission. It was humanity's last hope of understanding how to fight an enemy that seemed invincible. The alien forces had disappeared into the void of space once again, leaving only chaos behind them. Their ships were everywhere, invisible and unpredictable. The human fleet had taken heavy casualties, and without answers, the war would be over before it had even truly begun. Marcus looked at his team, a group of seasoned soldiers and scientists, all of them ready to risk their lives for the sake of the mission. Bonner, his loyal lieutenant, stood at his side, a look of determination in his eyes. "We've got this, Captain," Bonner said quietly, though Marcus could tell there was a trace of worry in his voice. They all knew the risks. They were stepping into the unknown, into a battlefield where the rules didn't apply. Marcus nodded, his hand gripping the railing of the ship's observation deck. "Stay sharp. We don't know what we're up against. Whatever they're using to cloak their ships, it's something beyond anything we've seen before. We need to find out how it works. Fast." The team filed out, heading for the shuttle that would take them to the edge of the battlefield. The sleek craft, equipped with the latest human technology, was their only chance to get close enough to the alien ships and gather intel. But Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this was a trap, a well-laid plan by an enemy who had known they would try to retaliate. As the shuttle launched, the hum of the engines filled the silence. Marcus sat in the captain's chair, watching as the distant stars grew larger on the viewport. His heart beat steadily, but the tension in his chest was suffocating. This mission could be the turning point in the war. If they didn't succeed, humanity would be left helpless against an enemy that could appear and disappear at will. The shuttle broke through the atmosphere, heading into the dark expanse of space. Ahead, the remnants of the battle lay scattered across the stars. Broken ships, debris, and the wreckage of human technology floated in a cold, eerie silence. The alien forces had disappeared once again, but Marcus knew that wouldn't last. They were out there, watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. The team moved quickly, securing their positions as the shuttle entered a region of space where the human sensors had failed them. It was as if the very fabric of reality was warped, making it impossible for the technology to detect anything beyond a few hundred meters. "This is it," Marcus muttered under his breath. "The perfect place to hide." Bonner stood next to him, scanning the dark void through the ship's enhanced sensors. "Nothing yet, sir. No sign of the enemy." Marcus gripped the armrest tightly. "Don't worry. They'll find us soon enough." As if on cue, a sudden distortion appeared on the edge of the viewport. At first, it looked like a mirage, a shimmer in the blackness of space. But then the distortion grew, revealing the silhouette of an alien ship, large, sleek, and nearly invisible to the human eye. The ship was like a shadow, moving with a grace and speed that was almost otherworldly. The shuttle's sensors lit up with an alert, but it was already too late. The alien ship moved with terrifying speed, closing in on their position. Marcus's heart raced. This was it, the first real contact with the enemy since the ambush. "Brace for impact," he shouted, grabbing the control panel as the shuttle began to shake violently. The alien ship was closing in fast, and there was nowhere to run. The shuttle's cloaking system flickered to life, but it was no match for the alien ship's technology. The ship's weapons fired, unleashing a beam of intense energy that hit the shuttle's side, causing it to spin out of control. Sparks flew, and the ship's systems went haywire, the alarms blaring louder than ever. "Stay calm," Marcus shouted, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "We can still make it. Activate manual control." Bonner moved swiftly, taking control of the shuttle's flight systems. The ship jerked to one side, narrowly avoiding another energy blast from the alien ship. But Marcus could see that the shuttle was damaged beyond repair. The hull had taken too much damage, and they were losing power quickly. "Captain, we're going down," Bonner said, his voice grim. "We need to land, and fast." Marcus's mind raced as he scanned the area for a place to land. In the distance, he saw an asteroid field, a chaotic collection of rocks and debris floating through space. It wasn't ideal, but it was their best chance. "Head for the asteroid field. We'll make our stand there." The shuttle's engines sputtered, but Bonner managed to steer them toward the asteroid field, weaving between the massive rocks. The alien ship followed, its cloaking flickering in and out of sight as it closed in on them. Marcus could feel the tension in the air, the weight of the situation pressing down on his crew. "Hold on," Marcus yelled as the shuttle lurched and veered to the left, narrowly avoiding a collision with a massive asteroid. They were almost there. The alien ship was gaining on them, its weapons primed and ready. Suddenly, the shuttle lurched again, this time from a violent explosion. A sharp pain shot through Marcus's body as he was thrown from his seat. The shuttle's engines had taken another hit. The ship began to spin out of control, the asteroids around them becoming a blur of jagged rocks. "Brace, we're going down," Bonner shouted. The shuttle crashed into a small asteroid, sending debris flying in every direction. The crew was shaken but alive. Marcus's head throbbed as he struggled to stand, his vision blurred. He could hear the crackling of the comms and the sound of Bonner's voice coming through, distorted but still clear. "Captain, we're not alone," Bonner said slowly. Marcus barely managed to stand and stagger toward the shuttle's observation window. Through the cracks in the glass, he could see it, an entire fleet of alien ships, hidden in the asteroid field, their cloaking devices flickering in and out of visibility. They had been here all along, waiting for them to make the first move. This was a trap, Marcus whispered to himself. They hadn't just stumbled into an ambush. They had been drawn here by design. The aliens were always one step ahead. But there was something else, a glimmer of hope. The aliens may have had the upper hand, but Marcus had something they didn't: humanity's resilience. "Get ready, everyone," Marcus said, his voice filled with resolve. "This fight isn't over." The wreckage of the shuttle lay scattered across the surface of the asteroid, smoke rising from the twisted remains of the once powerful ship. The crew had barely survived the crash, and now they were stranded, surrounded by a hostile alien fleet that had been waiting for them. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat thumping in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. His crew was depending on him. Bonner and the others were picking themselves up, gathering their weapons, and preparing for the next move. They had no choice but to fight back, even though the odds were stacked against them. Marcus's mind raced. They had been lured here for a reason. The alien fleet had known they were coming. They must have been watching them for weeks, tracking their movements. The realization was chilling. The aliens had an advantage they couldn't afford to ignore. But the question that lingered in his mind was, why? Why go to all this trouble? What was it about humanity that made them such a threat? Bonner approached him, his face grim. "Captain, we're out of options. We need to get out of here, or we're done for." Marcus nodded slowly. "I know, Bonner, but if we retreat now, it'll only make them stronger. We need to send a message that humanity won't back down. The words were easier to say than to act upon. The shuttle was beyond repair, and the alien ships were closing in. If they tried to escape, they would be hunted down. But Marcus knew that retreat wasn't an option. If humanity was to have any hope of surviving this war, they needed to fight back with everything they had. Back on Earth, the situation was no better. The war had taken its toll on every corner of the planet. Cities lay in ruins, and the human fleet had been decimated. The Council of the United Nations, the last remaining government body capable of making decisions for Earth, was scrambling to find a way to turn the tide of the war. There was no time to waste. Every day, more lives were lost, and humanity's chance of survival grew slimmer. In the high-tech war room of the Council's headquarters, leaders from around the world gathered. The air was thick with tension, and the atmosphere was grim. The holographic projections of Earth and the alien fleets hovered in midair, showing the full scale of the destruction. The Earth was under siege, and the aliens were relentless. Councillor Hammond, a leader with years of experience in international diplomacy, stood at the head of the table, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. His face was pale, his eyes tired from sleepless nights of strategizing. "We've lost contact with Captain Marcus and his team. Their last transmission indicated that they were in the middle of an ambush. We need to make a decision. Fast." A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. The Council knew that they couldn't afford to wait much longer. The alien forces were overwhelming, and their technology far surpassed anything humanity had ever developed. The human fleet was in tatters, and the enemy was showing no signs of slowing down. The stakes had never been higher. "We can't keep fighting like this," said Councillor Layla, a scientist who had spent years researching alien technology. "Our best weapon, our only chance, is the device we've been working on. The quantum energy core." The room went silent. The quantum energy core was humanity's most powerful invention. It was a device capable of harnessing the energy of an entire star, a weapon that could potentially turn the tide of the war. But it was still in its experimental phase. They didn't know if it would work, and they certainly didn't know if they could build enough of them to make a difference. "I understand the risks," Councillor Hammond said, his voice filled with both concern and hope. "But if we don't use it now, we may not get another chance. We need to act, and we need to act fast." The decision was made. The quantum energy core would be humanity's last-ditch effort to turn the tide. But there was another problem: the alien fleet's cloaking technology. It was more advanced than anything Earth had ever encountered. It made it nearly impossible for human ships to detect the enemy until they were almost upon them. And without the ability to track the aliens, the quantum energy core would be useless. The Council turned to Layla for answers. "What can we do to counter their cloaking technology?" Hammond asked. Layla thought for a moment, then nodded. "I believe we can develop a countermeasure, something that can disrupt their cloaking systems temporarily. It will give us a window of opportunity to launch an attack." The room erupted in conversation. There was no time to waste. If they could create this countermeasure, it could provide the breakthrough humanity needed to strike back. But the odds were still stacked against them. Even if the countermeasure worked, they would need to get close enough to the alien ships to use it effectively. And that was something they hadn't been able to do since the war began. Meanwhile, Marcus and his team continued to fight for their lives in the asteroid field. They had fortified their position, using the remains of the shuttle for cover as the alien ships closed in. The enemy was relentless, firing at anything that moved. Marcus knew they couldn't hold out forever, but they had to do something to give the Council time to act. They had to survive long enough for humanity's last chance to become a reality. Bonner approached Marcus, his voice low. "Captain, we've got a problem. They're adapting to our tactics. They know what we're doing." Marcus gritted his teeth. "They're learning. But we're not giving up. We need to hold them off long enough for the Council to send help." It was a grim thought, but it was their only option. The fate of humanity rested on the shoulders of a few scattered soldiers, while the Council on Earth scrambled to find a way to fight back. It was the last stand of a species fighting against an overwhelming enemy. Back on Earth, the final preparations were underway. The quantum energy core was being constructed, and the countermeasure to disrupt the alien cloaking systems was in its final testing phase. The Council had made its decision. Now, it was up to Marcus and his team to buy humanity enough time to put their plan into action. The fate of the war, and the future of Earth, was hanging by a thread. Marcus looked up at the stars, knowing that the battle was far from over. The Council had made its choice. Now it was his turn to make his stand. The stars above the battlefield were cold and silent, a stark contrast to the chaos below. The alien ships loomed in the distance, their sleek, dark forms barely visible against the void of space. Marcus and his team stood ready, their weapons armed, and their resolve stronger than ever. The time had come for humanity to make its stand. Marcus paced back and forth, his mind racing. The Council's plan was simple: use the quantum energy core to disrupt the alien fleet. But it all hinged on one thing: timing. They had to strike fast, before the aliens could adapt again. Their first strike needed to be flawless. Bonner, standing beside Marcus, tightened his grip on his rifle. "We've got one shot at this, Captain. If we miss, we're done for." Marcus nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "I know. We won't miss. The Council's got the countermeasure ready. It's up to us to create the opening they need." The human fleet, now reinforced with the remaining forces from Earth, was on standby. It was a ragtag group of survivors, pilots, and soldiers, men and women who had lost everything but still fought for one thing: humanity's future. They were all too aware of the cost of failure. The alien fleet had already decimated Earth's best forces, leaving only a handful of ships behind. "Captain, the countermeasure is ready," came the voice of Lieutenant Hannah from the communications array. She was the ship's tech expert, and her face showed signs of exhaustion. "We'll be able to deploy it once we get within range." Marcus checked the readings on his console. The alien fleet was getting closer. "How much time do we have?" "We've got maybe 10 minutes, Hannah replied, her voice tense. "We need to move now, or we'll miss the window." Without hesitation, Marcus gave the order. "All ships, prepare to engage. We make our stand here, or we don't make it at all." The fleet moved into position, and the battle began. Marcus's heart raced as he watched the alien ships advance. They were powerful, their weapons designed to obliterate anything in their path. But humanity wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for their right to exist, to prove that they could stand against the impossible. The first shot came from the alien fleet, a burst of plasma that lit up the darkness of space. Marcus's ship shook as the blast slammed into its shields. The force of the impact rattled every crew member, but the shields held firm. "For now, return fire," Marcus commanded. His crew was quick to react, unleashing a volley of missiles that streaked toward the alien fleet. The explosions lit up the night sky, but the aliens seemed unfazed. Their ships moved with precision, dodging the human attacks as if they had anticipated every move. "Damn it," Bonner growled. "They're too fast. How are we supposed to hit them?" Marcus's eyes narrowed. "We don't need to hit them. We just need to buy time. We have to keep them distracted long enough for the countermeasure to deploy." The human ships darted and weaved, using every trick they had learned in the past few months to stay alive. The enemy wasn't just technologically superior. They were strategic, relentless, and precise. But humanity wasn't backing down. They had something the aliens didn't: heart. As the battle raged on, Marcus received the signal. "The countermeasure is ready, Captain. We need to release it now." He looked to Bonner, who gave a determined nod. "Do it." Lieutenant Hannah activated the countermeasure, and the battlefield shifted. A bright pulse of energy shot out from the human fleet, disrupting the cloaking devices of the alien ships. For the first time in weeks, the enemy fleet was visible to the human ships. It was a brief moment, but it was enough. "Now," Marcus shouted, "launch everything we've got." The human ships fired with everything they had: missiles, energy blasts, and every weapon at their disposal. The aliens, now visible, tried to regroup, but the sudden barrage caught them off guard. For the first time, they were forced to fight back from a defensive position. But even with the countermeasure deployed, the aliens were far from defeated. They adapted quickly, countering the human attacks with precision. They were relentless. They had a terrifying ability to think several steps ahead, anticipating every move the humans made. One by one, the human ships were picked off. Explosions rippled through the darkness of space as their comrades fell. Marcus watched in horror as the battle unfolded. Each explosion was a reminder of the steep price they were paying. "Captain, we're losing ships," Bonner shouted, urgency in his voice. "We need to pull back." Marcus gritted his teeth. They couldn't retreat. Not now. "We hold the line. Keep firing." The alien ships, despite the initial surprise, were now regrouping and counterattacking with renewed force. Marcus's ship took another hit, and this time, the shields began to flicker. The damage was starting to pile up, but they couldn't afford to back down. Every second they fought gave the Council on Earth more time to finish their weapon. Suddenly, a voice came over the comms. It was Lieutenant Hannah again. "Captain, the quantum energy core is ready for activation. We just need to get close enough to launch it." Marcus's eyes narrowed. This was it. They were so close, but they had to hold on just a little longer. He looked at his team, Bonner, Hannah, and the rest of the crew, and saw the determination in their eyes. This wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a fight for everything humanity stood for. "Do it," Marcus said firmly. Hannah activated the core, and a massive pulse of energy surged from the ship. The shockwave reverberated through space, and the alien fleet was momentarily stunned. The effect was immediate. Their ships began to falter, their shields flickering as the quantum energy disrupted their systems. But the alien fleet wasn't out yet. They quickly began adapting to the energy pulse, their ships realigning and recalibrating their systems. Marcus knew the fight was far from over. This was only the beginning. The quantum energy core had given humanity a fighting chance, but it would take everything they had to win this war. With the alien fleet momentarily weakened, the human ships pushed forward, determined to finish what they had started. It was the first clash of many, but the message had been sent. Humanity was no longer the underdog. They had proven that they could stand toe-to-toe with the most advanced race in the galaxy. For the first time in the war, the aliens had seen the true might of humanity. The battle had raged on for hours, the harsh silence of space, shattered by the crackling energy of lasers, explosions, and the roar of damaged engines. Marcus stood at the command deck, his hands gripping the console tightly. The human fleet was battered, their ships limping through the void. But despite the losses, despite the overwhelming odds, they hadn't given up. And neither would he. "Captain, we're down to 20% power." Lieutenant Hannah's voice crackled through the comms, barely audible over the chaos. "Shields are failing. We can't take much more." Marcus's heart sank. They had made a dent in the alien fleet, but the price was high. His crew, his friends, were dying. One by one, their ships were being picked off, torn apart by the relentless alien assault. It was a terrifying sight, a nightmare that he couldn't wake up from. He turned to look at Bonner, who stood near the back of the deck, watching the battle unfold. Bonner was a fighter, one of the toughest men Marcus had ever known. But now, even Bonner's face was drawn, his eyes tired. The weight of leadership, of watching comrades fall, was taking its toll on him too. "We can't hold on much longer, Marcus," Bonner said quietly, his voice almost lost in the background noise of the battle. "But we've done what we could. Now it's time for someone else to finish this." Marcus nodded. He could feel the exhaustion in his bones, the heavy weight of what they had all been through. It was too much. The sacrifice, the losses, the uncertainty of what would come next. But he knew they couldn't give up. Not yet. Suddenly, a jarring explosion shook the ship, throwing everyone off balance. Alarms blared as the whole vessel shuddered from the impact. A wave of panic swept through the crew, but Marcus quickly regained control. "Status report," he barked, his voice steady despite the growing chaos. "Direct hit to the starboard side," came the response from one of the techs. "Hull integrity compromised. We're losing air pressure in multiple sections." The crew scrambled, trying to seal off damaged sections and regain control, but it was clear that time was running out. Marcus's eyes flicked back to Bonner, who had already made up his mind. "You know what has to be done," Bonner said, his voice grim but resolute. "I'm going to hold them off. You get the rest of the crew out of here. There's no time left." Marcus's stomach twisted. He couldn't let Bonner do this. Not after everything they had been through. "No, Bonner, I can't ask you to." "You don't need to ask, Marcus," Bonner interrupted, giving him a small, weary smile. "I'm not leaving my men behind. And I'm not letting you down. This is my fight, just like it was from the start." Marcus opened his mouth to protest, but the words died in his throat. He knew Bonner. He knew that once Bonner made up his mind, nothing could change it. The big man was a soldier to the core. And this was the end of the line for him. Bonner slapped Marcus on the shoulder. "You've got this, Captain. Make it count." Without another word, Bonner turned and made his way to the docking bay, where the last remaining fighter ships were being prepped for action. The humans were outnumbered, but Bonner wasn't going to let that stop him. He would fight to the bitter end. Marcus watched him go, the lump in his throat growing larger. He wanted to stop him, to beg him to stay. But he knew better. Bonner had made his choice. He would die fighting, just like he had lived, fighting for humanity's survival. The remaining crew members filed into their ships, leaving the command deck. There was no more time for goodbyes, no more time for second chances. The fight had to be finished now, before everything was lost. Marcus took a deep breath and forced himself to focus. There was still hope. The alien fleet had been weakened, and their quantum energy weapon was nearly ready. The rest of the fleet was counting on him. They were counting on humanity's survival. He tapped his comms. "All ships, prepare for final assault. We make our stand here. For Earth. For Bonner. We finish this together." The fleet charged forward, ready for the final push. The alien ships, though still formidable, were not as coordinated as they had been earlier. The human attacks were fast and furious, the last desperate attempt to reclaim their future. But Marcus couldn't shake the image of Bonner, his old friend, preparing for the final battle. It was a sight he would never forget. Bonner's sacrifice would be the spark that ignited the fire of humanity's fight for survival. His death would not be in vain. Marcus swore it to himself. As the ships closed in on the alien fleet, Bonner's voice echoed in Marcus's mind. "Make it count." Bonner's last stand was a spectacle of bravery and sacrifice. He flew straight into the heart of the enemy, his fighter weaving in and out of enemy fire as he single-handedly took down one alien ship after another. His skill and determination were unmatched, and for a brief moment, he seemed invincible. But the aliens weren't fools. They concentrated their fire on Bonner's ship, and despite his evasive maneuvers, the inevitable happened. The ship took a direct hit, and Bonner's fighter exploded in a flash of light, sending debris scattering in every direction. Marcus's heart sank as the explosion flared across the screen. Bonner was gone. The strongest man he had ever known, the man who had stood by him through every fight, was no more. The human fleet pushed forward, fueled by the memory of Bonner's sacrifice. They knew that they could not afford to lose this battle. It was for him. It was for all of them. And so, the war raged on. The aliens, now fully aware of humanity's resolve, began to falter. The tide of battle was shifting. Marcus knew that they had just bought themselves the chance to win. As the alien fleet began to retreat, the survivors of humanity's fleet let out a collective breath. They had done it. They had held the line, and they had survived. But at what cost? Marcus stood there, staring at the wreckage of the battlefield, his mind a swirl of emotions. He had won, but Bonner had paid the ultimate price. His sacrifice would echo through the hearts of every human soldier for generations to come. In that moment, Marcus knew what he had to do. The war was far from over, but humanity had just taken the first step toward victory. They had shown the galaxy that they were a force to be reckoned with, and Bonner's legacy would live on in every fight, every battle, until the day humanity stood victorious. The silence that followed the battle was deafening. The stars outside seemed to fade, as if they too mourned the loss of so many brave souls. The wreckage of ships floated in the vast emptiness of space, the debris a testament to the ferocity of the conflict. Marcus stood alone on the bridge of his ship, his eyes fixed on the view outside. The alien fleet had retreated, but humanity's victory felt hollow. The price had been steep, too steep. It had been hours since the last explosion rocked the battlefield, and the silence now hung heavily in the air. The crew had done their part, but now there was a question that no one dared ask aloud. Had they truly won, or had they only bought themselves a fleeting moment of peace? "Captain," came a voice from behind him, breaking the silence. It was Lieutenant Hannah, her face grim. "We've received word from the Council. They want us to return to Earth. Now." Marcus turned slowly, his tired eyes meeting hers. The weight of the decision that lay ahead settled in his chest like a stone. "What are they saying?" he asked quietly. "They want to make a final decision," Hannah replied, her voice strained. "They're asking if humanity is ready for the next step, if we are willing to face the full consequences of our actions." Marcus clenched his fists, feeling the surge of anger and frustration. The Council had been silent for so long. They had watched as humanity fought, bled, and lost so much. And now, when the fight was nearly over, they were asking for a decision. He had no patience for this bureaucracy, but he knew better than to ignore them. The fate of humanity rested on what happened next. "Tell them we're coming," Marcus said, his voice hard. "We'll face whatever comes together." Hannah nodded and stepped away to send the message. Marcus watched her go, his mind racing. They had given everything to this war. They had fought against an enemy that was faster, stronger, and more advanced. They had bled and lost so many, and yet they had somehow managed to survive. But now, the Council wanted to take the reins. They wanted control. His thoughts drifted to Bonner. The memory of his friend's sacrifice was still fresh in his mind. Bonner had given everything for humanity's survival. His death had been a catalyst, a reminder of what was at stake. But now, Marcus wondered if all of that had been in vain. Had their fight meant anything? Was the price worth it? The hum of the engines signaled the ship's movement as they made their way back toward Earth. The journey was long, but it gave Marcus time to think, time to reflect on what he had learned. The war had shown him the strength of humanity, the resilience, the unyielding will to survive. But it had also shown him something darker, the fear, the desperation, the willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. It had been a war of survival, but it had also been a war of choice, and now the choice would be his. When they finally arrived at Earth's orbit, the tension was palpable. The entire fleet had returned, battered and broken, but still standing. It was a testament to humanity's strength. The planet below was quiet, the silence of the aftermath settling over it like a shroud. There had been no grand celebration, no victory parades. The people of Earth had seen too much death, too much destruction to feel anything but weary relief. Marcus stood before the Council, his gaze unwavering. The room was filled with faces he knew, leaders, generals, scientists, and diplomats. The people who had made the decisions, who had led humanity through the darkest days. But today they weren't looking at him with the same confidence. Today, They were waiting for his answer. "Captain," the head of the council spoke, his voice calm but tense. "We have seen the reports. We know what you and your crew have sacrificed. What we need to know now is if humanity is truly ready to face the consequences of what we've done." Marcus looked around the room, his eyes scanning the faces of the council members. They had all been in charge when things had gone wrong. They had all been part of the decisions that led humanity to this point. And now they were asking him, no, demanding from him, what the next step would be. "The consequences," Marcus repeated, his voice low. "What are you talking about? We've fought and bled to survive. We've faced the worst, and we've won. Isn't that enough?" A murmur rippled through the room, but the head of the council held up his hand. "The galaxy is watching us, Captain. They know what we've done. We have made enemies, powerful enemies. The consequences of our survival will follow us. We can't hide from the choices we've made." Marcus felt a knot form in his stomach. The council was right. The war had left its scars, not just on Earth, but on the entire galaxy. Humanity had struck a blow to the alien forces, but it had also marked itself as a threat. Their technology was advanced, their tactics brutal. And now, the rest of the galaxy would watch them closely. The consequences of survival would follow them, whether they liked it or not. "So, what do you want me to say?" Marcus asked, his voice rising. "What decision do you expect me to make? Do we surrender? Do we hide? Or do we stand and face whatever comes next, just like we always have?" The council members exchanged uneasy glances. Marcus could feel the weight of their indecision, their uncertainty. They were afraid of the unknown, afraid of what humanity might become. "You've already made your choice, Captain," the council leader said softly. "The question is whether the rest of humanity will follow it." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. It wasn't just about him. It was about the people of Earth, about every human who had fought and sacrificed. Their future was on the line, and the council had no answers. They were leaving the choice to him. For a moment, Marcus stood there, his heart heavy. He thought about Bonner, about all the lives lost. He thought about the families, the soldiers, the people who had given everything for this moment. He thought about the humanity that had risen from the ashes, stronger and more determined than ever. And then he made his decision. "We don't hide," Marcus said, his voice firm. "We don't run. We face whatever comes next, together. We've already proven that we can survive. Now we make sure that we never stop fighting for our future." The room was silent. For the first time, the council members seemed to understand. They had been looking for an answer, but Marcus had already given it. Humanity would not back down. They would rise, and they would face whatever came their way. The war was over, but the fight for humanity's place in the galaxy was just beginning.